Welcome, everyone. I am John Ryan, and you're welcome to the Saturday morning edition of Manny's Irish Pub Sports Betting Show. I'm joined by my good friend and professional sports betting pals, Jesse Schule and LSU Chad. That's your new nickname, Chad. That's what we're going to call you. A lot of people like to think they're Las Vegas, whatever, like Las Vegas, and then, Las Vegas John or Las Vegas Jesse. I think this is even better because it's LSU Chad, the Tiger.
I wear it proudly, and I have to be perfectly honest. We know because I talked about this the first time I came on your show weeks ago that I did not expect this from this LSU team. I was thinking 7-6, 8-5, something like that, and they've really surprised. And I'm wearing the 2007 national championship hat. There's this team and the 1960 Minnesota Gophers, the only two-loss national champions in history. How many losses does LSU have this year? 2. So, I'm just throwing it out there. It's still a distinct possibility.
Wow.
They could be the third. I don't see it happening, but I didn't see this happening. So all bets are off. I've stayed away from betting LSU for the last several weeks for that reason. But I'm here and I'm going to wear the gear proudly.
Yeah, don't jinx him. But we're going to be joined by Jordan Capozzi here very shortly. He's actually backstage. If you don't know who he is, he's a great guy. ESPN's executive producer of a show that I appear on Fridays at 1:30 in the afternoon. But guys, before he comes on, I got to tell you something that happened to me on the show that was just so degrading I can't even begin to tell you. You want to hear about it?
Let's go.
You didn't soil yourself, did you, John?
Well, I kind of did. I think
take supplements for that.
I kind of did, to use that Pennsylvania Dutch slang, soiled yourself. That is a funny term because that just sounds like you fell in the mud.
Yeah.
But actually, you didn't fall in the mud. The mud fell in you. That's the difference.
Or out of you, as it were.
So I'm 10 seconds away from going live on ESPN, and the countdown's beginning, right? And all of a sudden, I hear this. I think it was oh shit, actually. I'm sorry, John, we have to bump you. And I'm like, oh my God. Are you kidding me? And guess who bumped me? They put on Jim Boeheim ahead of me.
Oh, Jim Boeheim. Oh.
Can you believe that?
Oh man. Gargamel himself.
That's my version of the story. That's my version of the story. And then we bring Jordan on. I'll let him explain his side of the story. But I was appalled. It took me 15 minutes to compose myself so I could come back on the air after that.
John, the only way to beat a 2-3 zone is you got to be able to shoot from the perimeter. So you got to work on your 3-point game, and you'll be fine. Jim Boeheim will have nothing on you going forward.
Well, I was going to wear a Syracuse basketball shirt today, but obviously I'm not. Hey, Jordan, what's going on, buddy? Welcome to the show.
John, it was his birthday. It was his birthday. If it wasn't his birthday, I swear. 78. We had to give him a good present.
But seriously, I was just teasing there for a little bit. But it was really show by a Hall of Famer.
So it was his birthday. So the owner of our company, we find out at 10:30, hey, Jim's not coming on your show today. We're shooting a commercial. 3 minutes before his normally scheduled time, my boss, Paulie, who you have the misfortune of knowing, John, is like, no, Jim Boeheim's on. So I'm like, John, I'm sorry. It's Jim Boeheim. So, and by the way, if you can't shoot from the perimeter, just dump it to the high post and then dump it down again. And
there you go.
You're going to beat SU too.
Little high-low action. I love it. Yes. High-low post action. Yeah,
Syracuse basketball talk since we lost to Colgate, and then Duquesne just beat Colgate last night.
Oh, man. Oof.
Syracuse is worse than Duquesne?
The transitive property, I guess.
Wow. I did seriously like Mr. Boeheim's. I can't call him Jim. He's Hall of Fame, Mr. Boeheim's take, though, on the team and where they need to work and some of the players. And there really isn't many, if any, better teachers left in the game than him. So to play for him would be just an incredible honor. And
just gotta have thick skin.
Yeah, but that's anybody though. Like any good coach,
you gotta have thick skin, and Just ask Jesse Schule, for example, what it's like. You win like 80 in a row, and then he loses like 3 in a row, and everybody's on his case. Like, you suck. I mean, my God. I mean, 3 in a row.
It's funny you say that, John. I got a bit of a nasty message on Messenger this morning. With a WTF and blah blah blah. And I was looking at it, and I'm like, I don't know if I should answer that, but I did. I just said, I don't know what you want me to say. I mean, I'm the same guy that went 180% of my bets for 2 months. You didn't really think I was going to do that for the rest of my life, did you? And the guy agreed. He said, "Yeah, I know. It is what it is. It is what it is, man."
I mean, you could have said, I've been getting the winning picks from John Ryan on the QT, and then all of a sudden he got pissed off at me and he started giving me the opposite side.
Oh my God.
Yeah, JR cut me off. That's what happened.
But this is an object lesson, though, right? In John's famous phrase, "Bet with your head, not over it." I think there's a tendency, we can get on a hot streak, and we can tend to think that we can't be beat, and that's when it's really dangerous. And you got to be careful that you don't shove too many chips in the pot, because that's when you're going to get your face ripped off. And just expect those bad beats to come, and just keep grinding. If you treat it as a grind, it's not gambling; it's just grinding.
Well, I mean, we face these challenges, Chad, but you can imagine a novice bettor who's going on the internet to find help from a professional. They find a guy who's won 80% of his bets for 2 months, and they're like, "This guy can't lose." I mean, this is great.
Why isn't everybody
and
doing
expecting
this?
them to display self-control? I mean, it's not very realistic, is it?
Right. I know, but we can still make the request, though, right?
Yeah, it reminds me of seriously, and this is not bragging, but I was learning about option trading in like 1984, and there were telephones back then, by the way, and cars that actually ran on gasoline. But seriously,
and that's how you had to deliver your options bets, was via car or telephone.
Yeah, exactly. I had to do this with the phone, wind it up. No, just seriously, it was really, the time period was the beginning of the merger mania. And there was, General Mills, General Foods, they were all talked about. So the guy that, was teaching me at the bank, teaching me, "John, just settle down on paper trade. Don't do anything live. Don't put your money in it. You got to, learn this first." Well, did I listen? No. So I put this call option trade on for, I forget how much it was. It was maybe $2,000, right? 3 days later, and it was on General Foods. 3 days later, General Foods announced that they were bought out. And I, honest to God, my first option trade ever was 28 grand in profit, to which, to your point, and not bragging, but to your point, I became like this. Mm-hmm. I mean, I thought I was, the next John Tudor Jones of option trading. And I proceeded to puke all that profit in probably a couple months, because I thought I knew it all. Mm-hmm. That was a great lesson. I mean, that was good. But that's what's going to happen with some new sports bettors. They're going to do a 16 parlay as their first bet, and they're going to hit it, and they're going to go, "Oh my God, these sports books are stupid. This is easy."
75 parlays later, they gave it all back.
Yeah, in an hour. Right. It took me 3 months, but a new sports bettor could give it back in an hour and then some. Anyway. That's a recap from last week. I actually don't remember what we did.
The problem with that is you don't remember what we did. Didn't we cancel the show?
We didn't have a show.
You don't remember what we did.
Oh, that's right. That's what the question is. What happened last week with
the
show?
I'm on top of things. Like Chad says, I don't have a B game. I always bring my A game.
Oh shit! See, I was gonna try to get that in there, and you snuck in it. That was clever. You got my joke in before I did. Yes.
The truth of the matter is, I got way behind on the work that I do for my clients, and that's why we could not have the show. I couldn't turn over to Jesse because I couldn't trust that his mouth would stay clean in my as my replacement. So I just decided to bag
stealing
it.
Everybody's jokes and stuff.
Yeah.
At least I did give the appropriate credit to you, though.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. I do appreciate that. Yeah, he told me to bring my A game today. I said I don't have a B game, so like it's A game, A game, A game all day, and then I sleep. And I wake up and it's right back to A game. Go hard or go home. Work hard, play hard, sleep hard.
Do you want to know why I told him to bring his A game, John?
Sure, I'm just dying to know.
Okay, well, you're wearing a Harvard shirt, so you should know this. What is the logical fallacy called that describes presenting only two options when in fact there are multiple possible scenarios?
Prejudice?
No. Chad looks like he's got it.
It's a false dichotomy.
False dichotomy, also known as the false dilemma.
And
I believe that applies to it applies often to injuries to star players, and when handicappers or novice bettors are trying to decide, shall I bet on this team? Shall I bet against them? Is the star player going to play or is he not going to play? And they really zero in on those two outcomes. He's going to play or he's not going to play. And I think that's a logical fallacy because, in fact, there is so many more outcomes than that. The star player in this case for me is Bo Nix with the Oregon-Utah game. Is Bo Nix going to play or is he not going to play? But maybe he plays the first series and then decides, well, I can't go. I tried. I gave it my all. I can't go. Maybe he plays the first quarter, gets knocked out because he's already banged up. Or maybe he plays the whole game from start to finish and he's ineffective because he's not 100%. There are so many different possibilities. And in my mind, most of them are negative, really. I think more often than not, when we're uncertain if a guy can go at all, about 25 to 30% of the time, the guy comes out and looks better than he's ever looked. The rest of the time, he looks crappy. So,
Jesse, where were you when Babers started Garrett Schrader a couple weeks ago? Couldn't you have told him that? Please.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your quarterback's a false dichotomy.
I don't know that. I don't know that it would have mattered in that one though, Jordan.
No, but
I think it was. It certainly didn't hurt or didn't help to get off to the start that they got off to with Schrader doing what he did when he was in there. But they didn't do themselves any favors with. I can't even remember the kid's name, the backup, but he's
Del Rio Wilson.
Del Rio Wilson, yeah, he's okay, but it's not the same as when Schrader is 100%. I will say this though about or it's interesting that you bring that one up because so my dog catcher model, right? So this is this thing that I've been putting together where I just identify these underdogs that should be favorites, or at least underdogs that should be a lot closer. They're either dogs by 7 or more points than they should be. We're looking at 31-28 so far straight up on the season. And wow. Utah is one of them. So this is like independent of any Bo Nix news. Utah's the better team, just flat out. Utah's the better team. I've got them favored by 6.5 points in this game, straight up. Just using all the data from the season up to this point, which is all Bo Nix practically at 100%, including the loss to Washington last week. This model also identified that Washington upset as like it was almost a guaranteed cover. And I even put a little bit on the money line because that money line was just too juicy. It was like plus 400 or something, plus 420. And I see this one too. So Utah +3 and plus the 128 money line is now. This isn't obviously you can't guarantee this. This thing is 31-28 straight up with these underdogs. So obviously they lose roughly half the time. But when you're playing money lines that are plus 120 to plus 450, like I got the Liberty upset over Arkansas, yep. Those kind of, like that money, the units, I'm up already. So two of the matchups that it identified this week was Eastern Michigan over Kent State and Miami of Ohio over Northern Illinois. Both of those hit, both of those money lines. I played both the spread and the money line and made like 5.2 units on 4 1-unit bets, 5.2 units profit. So like it's a model that already identified Utah as the favorite for me in this game, regardless of what happens with Bo Nix. So I'm going to the window with that no matter what. I
concur for a variety of reasons. You also got the Dream Crusher scenario for Oregon. You know, they've just basically been eliminated from the playoffs.
Yeah.
Ton of injuries aside from Bo Nix isn't the only guy injured for them. I was listening to an Oregon school podcast this just before the show, and they've got a lot of guys banged up aside from Bo Nix. And like Chad said, they're probably the better team anyways, the more dependable team. They got the best defense in the Pac-12. They can run the ball. They're more versatile. They're tougher. They're grittier and tougher. And this is a much better spot for them. So I'm on Utah, and I am also on Alex's play. Alex just gave out Liberty in the chat. I'm with you, Alex, on the Liberty, or maybe you're with me, one or the other. I have another announcement to make. I'm switching from coffee to red wine.
Oh my gosh. For those of you who aren't familiar, it's 10 o'clock at night where he is, or somewhere in that neighborhood.
10:30
So he says. I mean, for all we know, he's never been in Thailand, and he's been right down the street
in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have any proof he's in Thailand.
Right. We sure don't.
Man, I am really full of it this morning, aren't I? Anyway, Alex is, he's one of the most loyal. He was one of the first followers like I ever had on Twitter. And, this whole experience with Twitter, and you get up over that 10 grand followers, it's kind of humbling. Because that's like a small village, it kind of like it's hard to get your hands around. But Alex has been one of the first ones. And there's been about, I would say 30 to 50 of them that I do recall, when you hit that 200 followers, you go, oh my God, I got 200 followers. This is great. And you get all excited about it, and you tend not to forget how you got there. And Alex has been a big part of it, but you can tell he is pretty well polished over the years now too, with the analytics. As you can see, Virginia Tech 2-11 against the spread in their last 13 non-conference games, losing 9 of their last 10 since 2019, including 7 consecutive. Whoa.
I would accuse him of copying and pasting that right from my analysis for my premium pick. The only problem with it is his is more detailed than mine. So maybe I got it from him.
So my model has Liberty winning by it's got Liberty favored by 23, and the spread is like 10, 9.5, 10. Now those favorites don't typically do as well for whatever reason. I don't quite understand why, but it's still like I think this is one where you can take some of those other metrics and look at those as well, and it does favor Liberty to take this one when the favorite is favored by 15 or more points than what the actual spread is. They're 8-3 straight up, but only 6-5 against the spread. It's kind of crazy, like how the spread. I don't know what I'm still trying to figure out how like a computer model can get underdogs right, and then can have these where like the spread should be bigger and it's not, and those the teams underperform for whatever reason. I don't know if it's an overconfidence thing or what. Obviously, these teams don't know that this model is favoring them, so how could they play down to that? But I think maybe some of it is they go into these things and they're like, yeah, we got this. This is a done deal. And I've been in that situation before where I walk onto the field and I look around and I'm like, oh, look at these scrubs. We got this. And the next thing you know, you're down 3 touchdowns. You don't know what the hell hit you. So I'd be a little careful with this one, but those metrics there with Virginia Tech's performance recently is some valuable stuff.
It's just hard to imagine Virginia Tech getting up for this game. Why do they get up for this game? Really, it seems like a flat spot for them. Hugh Freeze auditioning for the Auburn job is the story that is floating around there out in the wire.
Yeah, how does that play though? Like for Liberty, because like they had that big win against Arkansas, and then they got embarrassed last week. And I just wonder, like, when you start having,
I think that's a good spot though.
But with the rumors of your coach looking to go somewhere else, I don't know. I'm just wondering, like, we are talking about emotions of 18-year-olds, 21-year-olds. So it's
well, I will say though that this isn't the first time they've dealt with those rumors. I mean, he's been rumored to be ever since he got there. He's been rumored to be on to somewhere else. So
yeah,
so they've dealt with that before.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So I think that the loss last week is still fresh in their minds. They probably got a chip on their shoulders. They got they want to get back to success, and
Yeah, they still have a chance to win 10 games, so there's a lot of stuff to play for. Yeah, for sure. Whereas Virginia Tech is like they're trying to avoid losing 10 games, and they may not really care that much at this point.
No, it's tough to pin a motivating factor on a team that's lost as many games as Virginia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
True. Let's talk about TCU and Baylor. TCU ranked number 4 for the second consecutive week, going against the Baylor Bears down in Waco. And TCU winning 4 consecutive against the spread. That initially makes me think that now TCU is finally getting fair market pricing after playing all these games. And the market has finally caught up to a decent price tag for them. However, I kind of thought, the way they're playing and coming off that huge Texas win. I mean, that caught a lot of the sharps I know out in Vegas with their pants down, literally. I mean, it really was, the sharps were all over Texas.
Wait, why literally?
Yeah, caught me with my pants down. I mean, I was absolutely shocked. That was like game of the year material on Texas.
Well, Jesse, the rumor is that I guess you were in college days. You were a former streaker. Is that right? Like,
Well, I'm 45 years old, and I currently don't own a pair of pants. So,
wow, you and Joe D'Amico have the same thing in common, man. That's amazing. I never knew
well,
that.
if you lived in Thailand, you probably wouldn't wear pants very often either. Did we scare Chad away?
I had to turn my camera off so I wouldn't be associated with this discussion.
Anyway, TCU 4-game winning streak against the spread. Baylor comes into this off of a humiliating home loss, 31-3, getting crushed by Kansas State. They gained 103 yards in that game on the ground, 203 in the air, which certainly is not good by their standards, but they gave up 221 to the air and 184 on 44 rushing attempts by Kansas State. When you say that, it seems like TCU ought to roll, but I think, the market is telling me that Baylor might be the right side here. Let's start with Jordan and go around the horn and see what we got.
I mean, yeah, first of all, if you have that underlying belief that most sports are a little bit rigged like I do, then you know that there's no way the playoff committee wants TCU in there. And yeah, that's a really silly line. I understand that the defense was playing great last week, but like you're telling me they're not going to give up a touchdown again. Like you said, the Texas line last week, everybody's looking at that and they're like super afraid from what I've seen to go with what the right line is. Cause like you guys, I'm sure would all agree just looking at the line, like maybe I'm wrong, but Baylor's the right play. It's super sketchy. So, I mean, just off that alone, I've seen a lot of people making that like their max play, their watch this video in a day and I'll prove football is rigged. And I personally happen to agree with them. I think TCU, they played a great game last week, but I don't think this is a Cinderella story that ends with an undefeated regular season. And good time to lose now, I would say, after that big win.
Yeah, they're in a bad spot, I think. Jesse, what do you think here?
Well, I've been known to subscribe to a conspiracy theory or two, but I don't generally subscribe to the theory that Jordan's going with. When the line looks off, it means somebody knows something. I'm pretty arrogant. I don't think there's that many people that know more than I do about this, but I've got some questions though. There's one thing I don't know. There's a question that I can't answer, and maybe you guys can answer, and that is Texas last week. Did they give Dave Aranda a blueprint for how to stop this TCU offense? I mean, even though TCU pulled out the win, I mean they were relatively shut down, and they hadn't been shut down all year. So, is there anything that Dave Aranda can take from what Texas did last week and replicate that here this week? And I'm just not sure that they've got the athletes to do it. And situationally, this is a spot where I'd love to come back and take Baylor here. But I just look at this team and I look at the quarterback and I look at the talent around him. And, aside from the coach, I don't think that Baylor matches up well against TCU. As much as I'd love to be against TCU here, I can't do it. And then on top of that, what Jordan mentioned about the conspiracy theory with the playoff committee, it's the Big 12 that provides the referees, though, right? It's in the Big 12's interest. The Big 12 wants a Big 12 team in the playoffs. So if they control the referees, which I believe they do, they should be fixing the game in favor of TCU to get that Big 12 team in. So that's another conspiracy to look at if you're subscribing to that.
Dueling conspiracy theories. I love it.
We'll get Alex Jones on here next week.
I think. Well, we know he's not going to be on Twitter. Elon Musk has already said as much. But I think it's interesting the conspiracy angle in this. But for what it's worth, the model says TCU should be favored by 17 in this game. So I don't know where this the line looks funny is coming from, unless it's just that it's too small. That TCU should be favored by more because they should. I think the same thing happened last week. And I remember Kirk Herbstreit was on Game Day talking about how he was going with Lee Corso's conspiracy theory that when the spread is Texas -7, somebody knows something, and I'm going to go with the people who know something. Well, they didn't know diddly because TCU, granted, it took a little bit of effort, but they ended up just stomping that line in the mud. What did they win by 10? So, it was a 17-point difference between the spread and what actually happened. I would argue that from the standpoint of the committee, I think TCU winning out actually helps, because I think that when you're looking at now, you saw what happened with Cincinnati last year, and Cincinnati, I think everybody can look at can evaluate that and knew that this was a little bit of a fraudulent. Okay, you kind of have to let them in. They're undefeated, but we all know that's not it. This is a little bit of a different animal. There's nobody on Cincinnati's schedule that played Alabama to a game-winning field goal. TCU just beat that team last week in Texas. And then you look at the rest of their schedule, and I saw the guys on ESPN this morning. They're talking about how, well, you can't look at all these ranked teams that TCU beat because they're not ranked anymore. They were ranked at the time. Like, okay, yeah, but they beat Kansas when and I think Jalen Daniels got hurt in that game. But they went into that game where, like, they're going up against a Heisman Trophy candidate and one of the hottest teams in football in Kansas. There's a lot of things where you look at what TCU has actually accomplished, and it's pretty impressive. And again, like my computer model doesn't look at the eye test, doesn't look at names or any of that stuff. It just looks at numbers and the wins and losses and the spreads of games, and it goes several iterations deep. And I know, John, you had talked about how, like, for the NFL, it doesn't really matter past a couple of iterations. But in college, you got to go a little deeper because you are playing. There's a lot of times where you don't see any cross-pollination with some of these conferences hitting each other enough to where there's a big enough sample set to really pull in, extract like the differential between these teams. I think TCU, I grant that Dave Aranda may have been given a little bit of a blueprint for how to slow down TCU. And I never discount crazy in-conference matchups, especially when you're going on the road. If they were playing this in Fort Worth, it'd be a different story. But going to Waco and having to play at Baylor, it is going to be tough. But I still just think there's too much talent for TCU. And I think, like I said, I think it actually helps them because you don't want to have this thing where, like, there's 3 SEC teams that are actually being discussed as part of this. The committee doesn't want that, but that's the reality. If LSU beats Georgia, if LSU and Georgia win out and then LSU beats Georgia, now you're talking about, okay, which 1 or 2 of the 3 SEC teams do you actually put in the playoff? Well, do you keep the LSU, SEC champions out of the playoff? How do you do that? How can you justify leaving the SEC champion out? Then, okay, well, who do you leave out? If you put them in, who do you leave out, Georgia or Tennessee? Well, Georgia beat Tennessee, but Tennessee beat LSU. And so you get into this big – so I think it actually helps the committee for TCU to win out. and be
Makes it a
undefeated.
lot easier.
Because it makes it easier. They don't have to have that discussion. You pick one of those SEC teams, one of the Big Ten teams, the TCU, and then it opens the door for either a USC or Tennessee as a one-loss team who didn't have to play, because Tennessee is actually riding the Alabama playbook right now. Alabama has done this multiple times where they lose their own division, and because they don't have to play another tough game, they actually skate in unscathed because they don't have the opportunity to lose again in a big matchup. Tennessee is very fortunate in that they get to finish this season, barring some unmitigated disaster, with just one loss, and that one loss being at Georgia, who is, by everybody's estimations, the best team in the country. The winner of Ohio State, Michigan is in, unless they really shoot themselves in the foot in the Big Ten championship game. The loser, I don't think, is in. I think whoever loses that game is out. Maybe you could make an argument that if Michigan
Ohio State lost, they might be able to get in.
But I look, man,
they love Ohio State, though. They just love Ohio
They do.
State.
They love Ohio State. And I hear people talk all the time about how there's this SEC bias with ESPN. I'm like, no. The bias is the Big Ten. If you're looking at anything, it's Big Ten bias, because the SEC just continues to just like stomp a mud hole in the whole playoff system every year. And the Big Ten they keep making excuses for why the Big Ten should be in there or why somebody should be ranked higher. And they keep losing in the first round. So like, I don't, I don't see the bias that is seen there. And I will say this, according to my model, TCU has the 27th toughest schedule so far this year. This is just by numbers, not any kind of like preseason rankings or current rankings by voters or anything like that. Michigan is like 90th. And then Ohio State is 90th, and Michigan is like somewhere in the 100s. In terms of strength of schedule. So just throwing that out there as like why I think like TCU to me makes perfect sense if you believe in conspiracy theories, as a team that really cleans a lot of this stuff up, because then it's very clean. It's like, okay, so we're going to take Georgia, who's probably going to win the SEC championship. We're going to take the winner of Ohio State, Michigan. We're going to take TCU. And then the last spot is going to be Tennessee, because Tennessee was the team that I think Tennessee is the one team that nobody argues doesn't deserve to be in the conversation.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but if we're talking conspiracy theories, it's one thing to say that the conference is going to influence the officials, because the conference basically controls the officials.
Mm-hmm.
They could easily, somebody from the Big 12 could go to the head ref and say, listen, in a 50-50 calls, give them to TCU. We really need this for our conference. Mm-hmm. And that's one level of conspiracy theory. But the playoff committee affecting it and how it has to trickle down, how many people have to be involved, that's a pretty hardcore. I mean, that's practically moon landings.
I'm Shaquille O'Neal. There are two moons. I was driving in my car and it was on the left, and then 20 minutes later it was on the right.
That's a pretty in-depth conspiracy theory. Because they just don't have the direct control. They have to go through steps to get to the officials to affect the game, right? So, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I see it.
Like we never flew to the moon and Neil Armstrong never lived. Conspiracy theory.
Yeah. So
I actually met a guy that told me that that whole thing never happened. And unfortunately,
you only met one guy that told you that? I've met quite a few.
I'm fortunate then, but this was in a bar, and there was no talking like counter, like Walter Cronkite. You remember him? I mean, he lived pretty long.
We'll say this though.
Ever heard of Asia fever?
No, I try to stay away from those things. It sounds contagious.
These people, these oddballs that you meet in a bar that are quite, way out there in left field, you might come across them once in a while. That's like half of the expat population in South.
Oh, I got it. Yeah. The room is right upstairs above the bar.
So I misspoke.
It used to be.
I misspoke. All due respect and apologies to Ohio State and Michigan. Ohio State has the 70th strength of schedule, and Michigan has the 93rd, whereas TCU is sitting at 27. You know who has the toughest schedule so far this year? This is
Georgia.
kind of wild. No, it's Stanford.
Oh, that's right. It is Stanford. Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
shout out to Stanford and their 2-7 record. Now they haven't done much against that schedule, but hey, they can say, look, the reason we suck is because we have the hardest schedule.
I ran a query for you guys.
Let's hear it.
For those people who like not only TCU, but Ohio State applies to this little angle I just dug up out of the blue over Maryland, -27, and Tennessee, -22 over South Carolina. So what do all those three games have in common? They have in common that the dog is playing a team ranked in the top 10. It's a team that is at home, conference dog. They scored 6 or fewer points in their previous game.
Oh, wow.
6-32 straight up. 13-24-1 against the spread for 60. Well, that'd be 35%, but 65% fading them, and not much on the total. But then if we put in 3 or less points, 3-27.
Now we're in Baylor territory. Yeah.
8-21 for 28%, and this would be Baylor. 8 would be 8-21 in this situation. 13-15 over under. So teams that don't score very well, and then playing another home game as a conference dog against a top 10 opponent doesn't do too well. But it doesn't mean that in this matchup that it's just food for thought.
Yeah, well, 8-21 is actually not bad when you consider what we're talking about. Like we're talking about you're playing a top 10 team, and you're an underdog, and you scored 3 points or less last week.
Yeah,
like the fact that they're 8-21 to me is pretty impressive. You know what I'm saying? Like that's now, is that against the spread or is that straight up?
That's against the spread.
Oh, that's against the spread. Okay, so
and 3-27 straight up.
Okay, 3-20. Okay, that's more like it. Okay, yeah. So I feel pretty confident about TCU winning this game. Now I could see Baylor keeping it close, but I don't know. Like I think this is another one where we're looking at the motivations, and I know it's not Virginia Tech. We're not in that kind of territory with this one, but we are talking about a Baylor, at 6-4. What are they playing for? They're already bowl eligible. You know what I'm saying? Like this is not. They don't have the same level of motivation to fight to the death for this win that TCU does.
They have the athletes.
And that's what my model says too. My model says like this is TCU running away. Like we're at a 3-point spread, and the model says 17.
Did you check the weather though? I mean, weather is going to be a factor. I don't know if that.
I don't think it's bad in Dallas, huh? Or no, this is in Waco. This is in Waco. My bad. Yeah, this is Waco.
I think it's rain, wind gusts up to 28 kilometers an hour.
Okay.
4 degrees. Rain.
Now we know he's in Thailand because he used metric.
I'm seeing like 10-mile-an-hour winds. The rain probably shouldn't start until either late in the game or until it's done, but it should be windy.
But who does that favor though? Like I tend to think
the under.
The under for sure. But I tend to think that favors that still favors.
If I hadn't given that clue out, that's why I was
it.
talking about whether or not Aranda had the blueprint or not.
Right.
I don't believe they have the athletes to actually win the game, but they might have the blueprint to slow the game down and stay in the game.
Yeah, no, and that's why I think if you're gonna guess Baylor in any way on this one, it's the spread. But I wouldn't want to. I mean, it money line is going to be okay, but it's not super juicy where it's worth throwing money at that. To me, that's just asking too much. And I liked Baylor early on in the year. I was betting hard on them.
The Big 12 teams, think about it. All those kids are recruited from generally that area of the country, and they're used to playing in the wind. It reminds me of the movie Tin Cup, where you play golf in West Texas, and you learn how to keep the ball low because you're always playing in the wind. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, personally, not to counter what you guys are saying. I don't know. I would think it favors the home team when it's windy because they're used to playing at home in the windy conditions. I mean, there's hardly ever a calm day in the Midwest. I mean, they do happen, but just food for thought. But let's move on to Penn State here. Ken Dworsnik, another big-time follower of us, wanted to talk about Penn State here and Michigan if we have time here. Michigan's taking on Illinois, and I boy, wouldn't that be something for the committee? And I want it to be difficult for the committee because I'm sick and tired of that fourth team getting in because they have the highest revenue-producing TV contracts.
Mm-hmm.
It bothers me. The only good thing this year, and I say this respectfully to Notre Dame fans, is that the Notre Dame program, not the football players, that the name Notre Dame is not going to be mentioned in that conversation. And that is a breath of fresh air because unfortunately they were overhyped by the media, by everybody, and they got creamed every time they were in that Final Four. But I do think TCU would hold their own. But if we have Illinois upset Michigan, that forces then Michigan to win, and that would give you 2 one-loss teams in the Big Ten, guys. And if I could bet on this, and I think BetMGM might offer it because I put out a note to them saying, if you can give me a line on this, I would bet it. 2 teams from the Big Ten, 2 teams from the SEC is your Final Four. Georgia, Tennessee, Ohio State, Michigan, and I would love watching those games.
Well, it's pretty tough to argue with that. I mean, a one-loss Michigan or a one-loss Ohio State, you're going to take a USC over that? I don't see it. Travis Dye's out,
right?
And
USC is
how do you put USC in there over a one-loss? I mean, obviously, an undefeated TCU gets in, but if TCU loses and this happens, those 2 one-loss teams are better than anybody else.
True. Let's move on to Penn State here quickly. And Penn State's taking on Rutgers in Piscataway, New Jersey. I love saying that town name because a lot of people can't pronounce it. I don't know why that is. But Nicholas Singleton has been a really good freshman running back for Penn State. And few people know he's even a freshman, but he gained 122 yards in their win last week, marking the 3rd game that he's gained over 100 yards rushing. And that is tied in the Big Ten of all freshman running backs. And I do say this, the future for Penn State, they are going to narrow that gap between them and Ohio State. I think Michigan's just having a great class of players roll through. If you look at the recruiting, it's a big question mark, whereas Penn State has a legitimate 5-star quarterback who is a stud, and he has played this year. And all you have to do is watch him for 2 minutes, and this kid is the real deal, and he will be playing on Sundays. But in this matchup, let's start with Jordan here and see if he has any good nuggets here. I can start you guys off with the fact that James Franklin is 8-15, coming off 2 consecutive wins over conference rivals. And Rutgers coach Greg Schiano, who I absolutely love. I think he's a great coach. But he's 2-10 in this situation against the spread in home games after having lost 4 of his last 5 games. Jordan, what do you think of this matchup?
A lot of times I'll just throw something out there. I'll just be straight up. I won't mislead you. This is not a game I've had my eye on or have a lead on. I mean, should Penn State be able to destroy this Rutgers team? Yeah, but 18.5, pretty big number. And you're on the road. I know Rutgers, you're not going in there and expecting a Death Valley environment, but you never know what a plucky underdog can do at home. So I don't really have anything on this. And okay. I'm eager to hear what you guys have.
Well, Jesse, you have anything? Hey, you do realize, Jesse, that my wish for the 2 Big Ten teams to make it in would put Penn State in the Rose Bowl. Probably against USC.
Of course.
That's conspiracy there. That is what conspiracy theory is all about.
It does look like a bit of a flat spot to me for Penn State, though. I mean, I expect them to win the game. Is there any real – I mean, who are they trying to impress by winning by 3 scores, 4 scores? I mean, a home game for Rutgers. I think Rutgers is capable of, at least a respectable effort. Again, I think this is another weather game. I think this is a game that's expected to have a bit of wind. It is late November in New Jersey. I'm
There'll be plenty
not
of Penn
sure that
State fans there. They'll be
I'm
like a
not.
home
I'm just
game
not sure this is a game where you'd want to bet on the visitors to run up the score.
Chad, anything on Penn State, Rutgers quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I got Penn State in this one. It's pretty even as far as where I have it modeled and where the line is. But I think that what you're starting to see is some of these teams, they're starting to round into their bowl season form and kind of punching their tickets. And as good as the story of Rutgers has been, they had, they hung with Michigan for a minute there, and they did a few little things here and there, but I think they're probably a year or two away from really being able to upset the apple cart a little bit. And Penn State I think has enough talent to run it. Now, I'm staying away from that spread. It's just 20 points is just like Jesse was saying. It's what's the motivation to hang that third score, and I'm always wary of something like that where a backdoor just kills you, and they're trying to hang on to keeping guys healthy and going into that. Like I said, you're going into bowl season form. So will Penn State win this game? Yes. Will they win it by 2 touchdowns? Probably 3. I don't know. Like I'm staying away from the spread. That's all.
Okay. I think I have the right graphic here. I do. That's the NFL one. Let's see what this one is. That's the same one, and this is that's hoops. I wanted to show this one.
Sneak peeks. Let's go.
Yeah.
Oh, get that Michigan Arizona State out of my face, John.
I don't.
Bro, that jerk, like you're down 30 with a minute and a half left and you're fouling with 3 seconds on the shot clock. Get a life, kid. No.
Jordan tailed me on an under bet in that game, and that was down 30 and you foul a 3-point shooter. I mean, like, anyway, Pac-12 situation, USC, UCLA. I have a system here. I'll just read it off instead of showing the graphic. The game is lined between the threes, meaning a 3-point favorite or a 3-point underdog. You're going to bet against the team, being UCLA in this case, that allowed 6.25 or more yards per play in their last game. And for those that aren't familiar with that stat, that's awful. That's just like playing with 8 guys on the field for defense. You're going to bet on the team USC that outgained their previous opponent by 125 or more total yards, and that's good. That set of parameters has gone 100 wins, 53 losses. So the money line is in play. If you're a money line player, you probably get pretty cheap. 95 and 53 against the spread, 64%, and even a lean to the under being 83 and 69 for 55%. That's the last 10 seasons. But if it's a conference matchup, which obviously this is a Pac-12 matchup, runs up to 67% against the spread, 69 and 34, and a 58% lean to the under. So I'm clearly taking Southern Cal here, and I do hope they win just to put a little pressure on this committee to see, if they have the guts to go with who they truly think are the top 4 teams, because this would put, if USC wins by 20, say, they are in the conversation without a shadow of a doubt.
Jordan should put his tinfoil hat back on and start talking about the Pac-12 referees here.
I'll say this: as much as we hate the SEC referees here in SEC country, I think the Pac-12 has some of the worst.
Well, what do you think they won in this matchup?
What's
the conspiracy theory? What does the Pac-12 want to happen here?
I don't think it's about the Pac-12. I think it's about let's take a step back, zoom out to the overall national conversation. Does it behoove ESPN and college football in general, Fox Sports, and all the everybody that goes into this whole thing and the whole NCAA cabal to have one of the largest media markets in the world heavily invested in this college football playoff? Southern Cal, are we really going to try to pretend like they didn't hand Pete Carroll a national championship that was completely undeserved in 2003? with the AP voting for, like, there's a crystal ball trophy that goes around and travels everywhere, and they played a game for that trophy, and then they're like, you know what? Let's give Pete Carroll the Central Florida treatment. We'll have a parade for them too. They'll get their own little national championship. No, it's
I love it.
The bias. If there's any bias, it's that West Coast LA market and that East Coast bias whenever it's possible to try to get those big heavy media markets involved. It's less so on the East Coast with college football, because there's just not that. You don't have the good New York teams, and like the Miamis and Florida States have kind of fallen off. But yeah, definitely USC, whenever they can pump that LA market up, yeah, they're all over that, man. And UCLA is not the team in that market right now. It's USC. So
and the Pac-12 is sort of a conference that's been down and out. They lost their television rights this year. They couldn't renegotiate their television contract. They're going to lose a couple of, most of the big teams from the Pac-12 are talking about moving to the Big Ten. To get a team in the playoffs this year might save a little bit of grace for the Pac-12. So if you're going to think conspiracy theories, Jordan, I'm above that. But for a guy like you could feel free to,
I'm
subscribe
not above
to that theory.
Trust me. What I usually don't look at like the spots. I don't think I'm very good at judging that. But like looking at this game where I like USC is when UCLA loses to Arizona, it totally makes this game less important. Obviously, you want to beat USC, but it ruins it for them. Meanwhile, USC, they've got Notre Dame next week. That's always a big game. But if you lose this game, as you guys have said, it loses a ton of significance. USC this year's also been that team where like they've had a lot of 21 or so point spreads and they can never cover. They win, but they don't cover. I know the committee doesn't look at that, but there have been a lot of games that they haven't played as well as people thought they would. So I see this as a chance. You go in on the road, you beat UCLA, you kind of try to stick it to them, a team that now they're playing for a lot less. And I mean, I know their quarterback has looked really good all season. And you know that Zach, I always mess up the name, Charbonnet. He's going to absolutely kill it. I know I blew it. I absolutely blew it. It's okay. But I just see this as a game that USC is going to come in and they're going to want to win by 2 scores and they're going to want to prove it because, as you guys said, there are a bunch of teams right now who are kind of ahead of them in the pecking order.
One thing to be concerned about for USC, though, is, and I've mentioned this to you guys several weeks in a row, they just keep on winning the turnover battle. So all those stats, all those yards per play, all their points per game and efficiency is aided by the fact that they're winning the turnover battle 3-4 to nothing every game. And that's not, I've been saying it's not sustainable. They've been proving me wrong the entire season. We got 2 games left. And here I am saying that eventually that has to come to an end. And I honestly still believe that. Like, I really, truly believe that you cannot just win the turnover battle every game for an entire season. I don't care if you're Alabama or who the hell you are. You're going to have a stinker where you turn the ball over and, the other team wins the turnover battle.
And the Eagles.
Not so fast, my friend.
All right.
Actually, what I think what I have experienced is that, like, for whatever reason, when that becomes your identity, teams just keep doing it. And like it usually you don't see that flip until the next season. And you'll see a team that's like plus 17 in the turnover battle one year, and then they'll be like -4 or -12 the next year. But over the course of a season, I don't know, it just becomes an identity where whenever there's an opportunity and a receiver's coming across the middle and he's got the ball and he's carrying it loosely, they're ripping at that ball and they just get it.
Let me make an analogy.
Yeah, go ahead.
So obviously we all agree that the turnover ratio has a lot to do with skill. If you got, big, strong, skilled defenders, you're going to cause more fumbles, cause more turnovers. But a lot of it's luck. I mean, you still have some of the best teams in the country that aren't winning the turnover battle. So because we agree that a lot of it's luck, if we were flipping coins and I flipped heads 20 times in a row, and then I wanted to charge you, vigorish, minus 160 on heads because I flipped heads 20 times in a row. So now heads is minus 160. Are you going to take tails or are you going to take heads? Because I'm taking tails. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I get it. What I'm suggesting is that the turnover margin in college football, or in football in general, NFL and college, is not the same thing as flipping a coin. Like, it is not an even. It's not even odds. It is. Yes, I get that there's luck, but there's also, like, how are those turnovers being generated? You know, if you're getting a pass rush and you're forcing a quarterback to throw under pressure and you're getting interceptions, if you've got people who are good ball hawks who actually play the ball well in the air, if you've got guys who are stripping the ball and you're actually putting helmets on the ball. And like I said, like, I've seen it too many times where, for whatever reason, a team is plus 12 in the turnover category, they win the turnover battle that next game, and then they win it now. Could they possibly go into this game and turn the ball over 3 times and UCLA only turns it over twice? Yeah, I still think they're good enough, even with a small, but I don't think that this is going to be something where the odds are going to overcompensate and we're going to end up with, UCLA with no turnovers and USC turning it over 4 times, and that's how UCLA wins. I just don't see that happening, because I think
another thing
it's part of their
about
identity.
it, though, is all those turnovers they've been getting, like I said, that factors into how we rank this team. Their average,
for sure,
scoring. And when you do this matchup, I don't know what your computer comes up with, but
minus 7.5
come up with
USC.
Quite an even. It looks like quite an even match. It looks like a coin toss to me.
I got minus 7.5 USC for this one.
Okay, I've got it more of a much closer matchup than that. And like I say, everything USC is doing, they needed those turnovers to be doing what they're doing, and therefore they're going to need them here, in my mind. And there's no guarantee they're going to get them.
I got to look, because now you're making me think. I want to see what the turnover margin was when they lost to Utah in that heartbreaker.
By the way, if you guys are watching me, I'm very sorry. John knows how much of a pain in the ass Paulie is. He's outside the window, like, texting me and whatnot. So I apologize if I look distracted.
I was wondering. I was like,
tell him to reveal himself instead of hiding outside behind the window.
No, he's 20-30 in our NFL picks. I don't want him here. Get him out of here.
So Utah turned the ball over
not
once.
Following me then.
Yeah, Utah turned the ball over once in that game, and USC did not turn the ball over, and USC still lost 43-42. That's why I think Utah's a very underrated team going into this game today with Oregon. But as far as USC is concerned, even in their loss, they won the turnover battle. So
that's what I'm saying. I think they've won the turnover battle in every single game. Yeah. And what I'm saying is, even teams that benefit from creating a lot of turnovers, like Alabama in the past, or probably some of the great LSU teams. At the end of the year, you calculate, they're plus a lot in turnovers. Mm-hmm. But there's got to be one game where they don't win the battle, and I haven't seen that from you. Even the one game that they lost, they won the turnover battle. They're winning the turnover battle every week. They've got to have a game. It's got to even out. I mean, it doesn't got to really, but
that's my point. Is that I don't think it has to. I don't necessarily.
Yeah, no, you're right. It doesn't have to, but as a betting man, I'm betting it will.
Now, I would definitely bet.
You hear me, Paulie? Are you there, Paulie? I can tell you guys this: teams that score 28 or more points in college football, 24 or more in the NFL, that have the same or fewer turnovers in a game, and this is in my research reports from my premium, client subscribers. Just about, it is every single week. Those are really high percentage situations. Now, obviously, every game doesn't go that way, but if you score a certain number and you have the same or fewer turnovers, there he is. Look at this guy.
Let's go.
Paulie, is that the guy that bumped you, John?
Is that the guy that bumped you? John was just telling him that he got bumped by Jim Boeheim.
Yeah. It wasn't like he got bumped for dogs doing tricks or anything like on Carson.
I felt honored. I really did. I mean, I got bumped for a Hall of Famer, man. I mean, what could be better? It'll never happen again in my career.
I know you stink. Do you have a single pick? Do you have a single pick this weekend?
No. I don't want to hurt your listeners.
He's not even taking John
Whatever I
Ryan,
say, just go opposite.
ESPN show bets.
I'm just glad he didn't say UConn over Army because I'm on that one, Alex. I'm on UConn over Army.
No.
Straight up money
No.
line.
Really,
Thank you.
I like Army there. I
How
really
can
do.
you- Did you see what Army did what Liberty did to UConn last week on the ground? I know they still lost, but like Army's a 10-point favorite. They're going to run it down their throat. If UConn didn't jump out to a 14-point
not only
lead,
that,
like
didn't they like
I take Wake.
didn't they tear down the goalposts and have big celebrations about becoming bowl eligible? Isn't it the massive letdown spot?
I mean, it could be. Or
Wake. I take Wake.
I mean, I know Jim Morris said
UConn
our
should
goal wasn't to
be
win
favorite.
6 games, but I don't believe that.
Yeah, UConn should be a 10-point favorite in this game, and they are a 10-point dog. So I'm hitting that money line. We are.
I'm
Look,
going to interrupt you guys just for a second.
Go ahead,
I
man.
want you guys to continue.
Your show.
Some guy named Jim Coventry of RotoWire
Let's go.
does a show at 11:30, and I'm his guest. And of course, I'm being facetious because Jordan has Jim Coventry. He was actually leadoff on Thursday, the day I got bumped by the Hall of Famer. And they did ask me, like, do you mind if Jim Boeheim goes on now instead of 1:15, and then you go on at 1:15? And I said, that's a lot to ask of somebody like me.
we had Wake Forest play-by-play man Stan Cotton on the other end too, so we had to fit you in quick. Speaking of which, Paulie, that's his one pick. He's covered SU sports for like 20 years, used to travel with the guys for basketball, engineers the games. He said if he had to put something out there, he likes Wake today, if you're at all interested in that dumpster
All right, listen,
fire of a game.
I got an update here. Chris Facilla, the Bear, just picked Baylor plus the 2.5 against TCU. So now I feel even better about my TCU pick because Facilla is 15-17-1 this year. I don't understand. Chris Facilla and Matthew Berry are two of the biggest hacks in their respective fields. How are you, Matthew Berry? You're the fantasy football expert for ESPN, and your takes are literally like, I think you should start. I don't know, whatever. I think you should start Patrick Mahomes this week. Oh, really? No kidding. Really? No kidding. I should start Patrick Mahomes this week. Thank you
Tell me
very
more.
much, Matthew Berry. Tell me more.
Can I throw Colin Coward into the mix? I think he's one of the biggest hacks as well.
Well, but Facilla,
Well,
his whole existence. Facilla's whole existence is picking games against the spread. You get to choose your favorite 3 games every week, and he is, with his best bets in his career, Chris Facilla, the ESPN expert, is 53% against the spread in his entire career with all of his picks for a profit of 4.91 units over like a 12-year span. That is garbage.
Negative 4.19 units.
Well,
I
guess, but why is he an expert? Like, why is he their guy that they go to for this stuff? Like, y'all couldn't find anybody better.
Isn't that what they want? They partner with Caesars and then they give us bad picks. That's
they give us bad
right?
picks. Yeah, he's the Jim Cramer of their.
That's why I hang with you guys instead of watching ESPN in the morning. You guys know what you're talking about. No agenda.
Before I jump here, I'm going to jump over to Jim's show here, but I think Chris is doing pretty good in the Las Vegas Invitational. And while I'm away, I'll bring up that standings because there's 25 guys that are invited into that, and somebody's put up 25 grand for them to compete. And it's good that Jesse and I aren't in it because we'd be right in there in the top 5, humbly said. But I think he actually is up pretty high in that standings, which then begs the point is which picks are ESPN's picks and which ones he's doing for the contest. But you do have to do 5 picks in the contest, and you can pick NFL or college. So maybe he ought to do the NFL show, Chad, if he's terrible at ESPN at college.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe
I will be back. You guys have fun. If you finish the show in the next 15 minutes, you don't need me to come back because Jesse knows how to end it. And you guys can fight now over who wants to be the host because I know that all of you want my job.
Jesse,
I'm a producer at heart, but
yeah,
I do have a thing to bring up. So once John leaves, I'll ask you guys the dreaded question where you'll start to judge me or not because I've been getting a lot of hate for something I've been doing lately. So we have a guy on our airwaves who used to call women's basketball for like 10 years. That means he's in like the top 0.01 percentile of women's basketball knowledge. He's very good with plays. Is it a good idea or a problem that we're ripping the Campbell spread, the Memphis spread Brown? He's like 4-0 so far. I know it'll go off, but I won't stand it too quick. But is that straight degeneracy, or is that exploiting a market that's not attacked?
You're talking women's college, women's division.
Absolutely. I'm getting info from a dude who definitely is in the top 0.01% of knowledge in like the country via calling games for 10 years.
Like I said, the guys that I know that are in the top 0.01% of the, are guys like me, and you tend to find them sometimes slumped over a chair having too many daiquiris in a Las Vegas casino. So I don't know if that's going to impress me that much, but
noted.
But would I bet on Division I college women's basketball? Absolutely. I mean, I bet on the W. Yeah. That's probably I'm more interested in that than I am the WNBA. The
I'll say
WNBA.
this.
I tell everybody, everyone's like, you have a problem. I'm like, no, the problem is you who's betting primetime NFL parlays every week and getting scammed. Like, bet on something that only 10 people in the world are betting
especially
on.
when you bet the parlays that they hand pick for you. They're like, hey,
geez.
do you want this? Look, this one's boosted to I remember I told
Speaking
somebody,
of Colin Cowherd, the Colin Cowherd parlay.
Oh gosh, yeah. So they had one, it was Justin Herbert. I've talked about this so many times. It's hilarious. Justin Herbert to throw one touchdown went from -800 to +100. He threw 0 touchdowns. Do you know how many people probably put like $500 on that because they were like, there's no way he's not going to throw one touchdown. Sure enough, he didn't throw one touchdown. He threw 0.
Yeah, no, I'd definitely rather bet on women's college than WNBA. I mean, I can remember I actually had a really good record with WNBA this year, and it was the first year I actually took it seriously. But I know I bet on one game and like half the women walked out. It was like, I don't know. I don't even want to speculate on why they walked out. I'm not even going to go there. I don't want to get canceled. But
did they glue themselves to the floor?
It was something that wasn't going to happen in a men's game, and I was pretty bummed out about it. Like, why the fuck am I betting on WNBA?
Yeah, so I'll say this too about women's college basketball. If there's a way to tease the spread up even bigger, because like women's basketball is going to go one of two ways. Either it's going to be like a close game between two evenly matched teams, or whoever the team is that's favored by 20 is going to win by 75. Because I've seen it too many times where it's like 83-26 or something like that, and I'm like, oh my god. Okay.
South Carolina beat Clemson by like 60 the other night.
That's what I'm saying.
I would have come on and just said do that, but
so
they're playing
bad.
Stanford, so there's a real basketball game.
Right, it's a real basketball. There's a real basketball game, but when there's not a real basketball game, like okay, the spread is 29.5. What kind of odds can I get if I tease that up to -48? Like if I tease it up to -48, can I get plus 530 odds? Because I'm taking it because I feel pretty good about them winning by 50. But I do want so real quick before I forget.
Sorry if I just lost all the viewers, but I promise
we got to get back to football, boys.
So Alex,
we got to cut this women's basketball out.
Alex brought up these, and I can't. I'm used to running my own show where I can pull up the chats or whatever. But so Alex, I think you're saying Facilla had UCLA, Baylor, and UAB this week. He's 37-18 in his newsletter. Yeah, I heard him talking about that. His newsletter does really well. But okay, well then why are you coming on national TV and giving away crap picks? Oh, that's right, to sucker everybody else into betting those things and losing their face. But yeah, so I guess those are all against the spread, which I can't necessarily hate it, but UCLA, that spread's really tight. I think USC walks in that game. I actually think TCU beats that spread. And LSU UAB, I could see it's going to be wet tonight, and it's going to be cold in Baton Rouge. So I could see LSU. It's going to be like a late 9 Eastern start. So I could see that actually playing a little closer than that. I think it's like 13 or 14.5 for LSU. I could see UAB keeping it at 2 touchdowns. That doesn't, and so Facilla could go 1-2 in that one. But so the way I look at this is like, I'm not interested in trying to pick any of these 50-50 matchups. Like you were talking earlier, Jesse, about like, if I flip a coin, are you going to take, minus 160 that it's going to be heads again? Like, no, I don't. That's not how I bet. When I bet, I'm looking for where is it like closer to a 50-50 shot, but I'm getting 3-1 odds. Yeah. I'm playing pot odds in every turn. So I had this model that I developed a couple of decades ago. And I used to use it where I would try to like pick every game, and I try to be like, okay, well, this and this. It's like, so far this year, it is 182 and 82 straight up, and 147 and 117 against the spread, which is fine. But like, you're not going to make a whole lot of money betting all of those games. You what do you throw $2 or $5 a game at these, and then you just grind your way each week to maybe making $30 or maybe $100. No, what I did is I said, okay, where is the biggest bang for my buck? And it is betting these underdogs who should be favorites. And these are the ones that are identified. So already this week, Eastern Michigan was a plus 7.5, plus 235 money line dog. They won straight up. Miami of Ohio was plus 1.5. They were only minus 102. It was kind of pick on the money line on that one. That one hit as well. The remainder of them, and there's a couple of them that start in 14 minutes or 24 minutes. That's why I wanted to hurry up and say this. Duke plus 7.5 and plus 255 money line. And then UConn plus 10.5, plus 330. These are the lines that existed on FanDuel like a couple of days ago when I first pulled this. But those are the ones that I'm looking at. There's a few other ones. NC State plus 3.5 with a plus 168 money line. Charlotte plus 3.5 with a plus 130 money line. Western Kentucky plus 5.5 with a plus 188 money line. Oklahoma State plus 7.5 with a plus 245 money line. That one scares me a little bit because they've been like, Oklahoma State has been one of the most enigmatic teams this year, where they blow out somebody who they should lose to, and then the next week they're getting shut out 48-0 or whatever it was. And then finally Utah plus the 3 and plus 128 on the money line with Oregon. And the only other one that's kind of weird is the NC State game, because with no Devin Leary, like it's just, they're not quite the same team that they were with him, but they've started to find their own identity with they've got the other kid who he runs a little bit more, but he's still gotten the job
Morris
done.
now.
Yeah,
they
Morris.
Chambers and
Morris has played like the last couple of weeks and played okay enough to get the job done. And there's enough talent. It wasn't all Devin Leary, right? Obviously. So as long as they can play together, and the overall team, with some of that data that goes into this model being with Devin Leary at quarterback, you have to take it with a grain of salt. That's the only one that I'm a little kind of iffy on.
Do you run every single game on the card?
Yes, I run them all. I run them all spread and money line, both.
Because I've got a double-digit dog that I like to win outright tonight. I'll run that by you and tell me what your models, if you remember. But
no, I have.
I like Hawaii. I like Hawaii. It's their final home game.
Oh, we're chasing tonight, baby.
Who are they playing? Wait, what's
UNLV?
UNLV.
Oh,
UNLV's coming in off 5 straight losses.
Mm.
So UNLV's lost 5 in a row. And now the counter argument is, well, UNLV needs to run the table to become bowl eligible.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're worried about becoming bowl eligible, you don't lose 5 in a row heading into this game, right? Like, it's hard for me to use that as a motivating factor. Like, you just lost 5 in a row, and now you're going to get up for this game to become – I'm not buying that. Hawaii is 2-2 in their last 4 straight up at home. The 2 losses by a touchdown against Utah State and Wyoming. Of course, Utah State and Wyoming are a little bit better than UNLV. Last week, they put 521 total yards on the board. They turned the ball over 4 times, lost the turnover battle 4-0, which is the only reason they didn't win the game outright. The quarterback threw 3 picks, I believe, 2 or 3 picks. If they can limit those turnovers, I think they've shown enough improvements. It's their final home game. They're getting 11.5 points. I like them to cover, but I also like them to win outright.
I got UNLV minus 17.5 via the model. But like I was saying before, though, the spread, when the favorite is favored by more in my model than what the actual spread is, the favorite is 51-56 against the spread so far this year. So if I'm doing anything, I'm probably staying away from it. But if I'm doing anything, I'm probably going to go Hawaii plus the 11. You know, I at least like them to keep it close. This is one of those. And the other thing is too, for whatever reason, like as it gets later in the day, like the West Coast teams seem to just like be like, yeah, screw your model, we're gonna lose anyway. So with the exception of, I got to give a big shout out to Washington. So there's another piece of the model that I've identified that gives us some pretty good info. It's when the favorite shouldn't be is when the favorite is favored too much, when the spread is too big, and I'm looking at anything that's off by 7 points or more. And Washington, Oregon was one of them last week, where I think the spread was like 13.5 or 14 or 13, something like that, and it should have been like damn near pick. Let's see, where is it? Bear with me here. It was 13.5, and it should have been 3.5. So I didn't just go with the spread on that one, which I hammered hard the spread on that one. I felt good about Washington covering, but I also dropped a little bit on the money line for Washington too, because it was like plus 500 almost, or plus 450. And so there are some of those opportunities. Those teams don't typically win straight up very often. It's like they're like 5-29 so far this year straight up, but they're 22-12 against the spread. So that's, when you're at 65% against the spread on these, that's one where I like to dabble a little bit too. So those are one of them was Bowling Green this week. Bowling Green actually won that game straight up, and that was a plus 500 money line. I got UMass plus 33.5. This is crazy, but just follow me here, okay? Plus 33.5 against A&M. Plus 4,000 money line. Let's go. It doesn't hurt to drop $1 on that. I got Old Dominion plus 15.5 with a plus 570 money line. Maryland plus 27.5 with a plus 1,600 money line against Ohio State. And then Wyoming plus 13, plus 420, and New Mexico State plus 28.5 with a plus 2,400 money line. Again, these are like I play them all against the spread, because they're going to be, in that 65% range, and I don't want to try to pick and choose and pick the wrong three. But then I'll drop a little bit on the money lines on the ones that are really, really juicy, because why not? That's how I made that money on Washington last week. I actually bet Washington to win straight up, and they did.
I may or may not have been watching that game at the Dome, because the game I was watching was awful. Speaking of the Dome, fellas, if you can't tell, desperate need of a haircut. Got it at noon. I will be jumping off, and I appreciate the time. And I always wish for the best for y'all, but I want Army today. I feel very strongly about that. So
I like Army as well. I get what Chad's saying, and I can see why the model likes UConn. But I'm just all about that emotional letdown. I mean, this team to reach 6 wins is such a miraculous season for Jim. I mean, everything they don't need to do anything else to blow our minds. They've blown our minds already. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess they could keep it up, but I'm assuming that they're going to have a bit of an emotional letdown here. And Army is the team that really needs that. They need this result here. So just such the motivational, the situational. It looks like on their best day, UConn's probably the better team, but this isn't that best situation for UConn. This is a really tough situational spot for UConn. Hard to get up for this game the way they've gotten up for all the previous games to get to this point, I think. So I agree with you, Jordan.
I'll do what I always do. I'll tie it to Syracuse, then I'll head out. Army playing in front of a home crowd, playing against a team that got walloped by Syracuse. I'll take Army with how Syracuse looks right now. Fellas,
that was a better Syracuse team, though.
It absolutely was, but I have no faith in that team anymore. I don't care. They're not.
Fair enough.
They aren't who we thought they were. It's the inverse of the famous phrase. But
there you go.
Thank you, fellas, and hope all your bets are as good as they sound today.
There you go. There you go.
Head with your head and not over it, Jordan.
Yes, sirree. It's
right,
it's pretty easy to bet over my head. I'm 5'3", so I'll keep that in mind.
Are you really?
Well, I'm 6 foot on Tinder. And
Oh my God,
I'll
this
leave
guy.
you with that before I have to
All
stand
right.
up.
All right.
See you, fellas.
All right,
See ya.
peace. Oh, that was funny.
So let's talk Army, Chad. Army's deficiency has been their pass defense, right? I mean, they've just been woeful against the pass. But UConn's not really presenting much of a threat in the passing game, right? UConn's comes in, they want to pound the rock, much like Army. It seems like maybe not the ideal matchup.
Man, I ain't looking at all that. I just look at what the model says. The model says that UConn should be a 10-point favorite, and they're a 10-point dog, 10.5, whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to hit that. That's 380.
You know what that sounds like to me, Chad? You know what that sounds like to me? Sounds like B game, brother.
No, this is my A game. My A game is I don't overanalyze and talk myself out of this stuff. I just push on all these buttons. Whenever the model says do this, I do that, and I don't. I take me and my emotions out of it. Like I don't, because otherwise I can talk myself out of some really good plays. And I could have made a similar case for why there's no reason Liberty should have beaten Arkansas. All the different reasons.
I did on this show. You and I discussed it, and actually it's quite relevant to what we're talking about right now, because I mentioned the matchup and the run versus the pass and how that worked out, and I was, what can I say? I was wrong, and I did have the inclination that I wanted to take Liberty. It did look like, geez, this is a great spot that you're getting quite a few points, but I was concerned that they didn't match up very well in that aspect, and I should have. I talked myself out of a winner there.
Yeah, this is crazy. It just dropped. I'm sitting here while I'm talking to you. I'm going to bet it, and it went from plus 385 to plus 320 right before my eyes. This is terrible. I'm still betting it anyway, but I'm trying to get this stuff in before, because they kick off in like 10 minutes. So let's see. Army, UConn. Oh, Pitt and Duke. That was the other one. So Duke plus 6.5 and plus 225. And then I think the other ones aren't until later. I got Appalachian State losing. Not losing, but not covering the spread. I got to find that one. So pardon me, but so this is what I do. I just kind of look at these and I'm like, okay, it's basically just like an arbitrage situation where I'm like, okay, they're giving me these odds when the odds should be this instead. And so I just take it and run with it. And if I hit on enough of them, it doesn't matter what the record is. I'm looking at units on this, so that's why, like, on some of those money line plays, I'm like, well, yeah, okay, I may go 5-29 straight up with these crazy odds picks, but if I hit one plus 4,000, I made up for all the other ones. And the thing is, like, last week they went like 3-2. so it's like, it's not bad. You know what I'm saying?
Sounds like you're buying the beer.
Well, I don't know about all that. I didn't bet a ton, but all right. So Charlotte, Louisiana Tech, that was another one. Oh, that's at 2:30 though. Okay, so I got some time. Where's the Appalachian State? Who's Appalachian State playing? Because that was another one that I had on the list. I'm trying to see what time they play. I did. Okay. Old Dominion. Okay, that's later. Yeah, that's later on today. So I'm good. All right. So I got everything I need. Yeah, the only other one that was identified was Coastal Carolina against Virginia, but obviously that one's not going to be played. That tragic situation there is just, man, I don't even know what to say. That's awful what happened, and it's really a shame that we've got to have that discussion instead of just talking about football. But yeah. So what else you got? You got any other crazy plays for this week?
I'm looking at the under in a lot of Big Ten games. Illinois, Michigan, the Michigan State game. It's going to be, it's late November. There's going to be wind. There's going to be freezing cold temperatures, sub-zero. maybe rain or not rain. I'm not even concerned about the rain. I'm mostly concerned about the wind. And I've been doing it now ever since November rolled around. I've been just checking the weather reports, checking the schedule, and if it fits a criteria where you got wind of 15 miles per hour plus, you got two teams that are capable defensively, and if that total holds in the mid to high 40s, I don't want to bet under 36 or something in an Iowa game where
Right.
anything could happen. But if the total is 47 and a half, 48, 50, and and you got a bad weather game and you got two teams that know how to play defense, I think if you sign up for as many as those as you can, you're going to win more than you lose. And that's been the case for me, certainly, for years, but certainly this year as well. And both Michigan games fall into that. Michigan and Michigan State fall into that category.
Yeah, and Michigan State is playing right now, aren't they? They were the early game. I think they're underway already, if I'm not mistaken.
Let me check that out.
Or no, Navy UCF. Michigan State is playing a little later on. I was looking at it. The one score was above the other one, and I got mixed up. But yeah, so Navy and UCF are playing right now. And what did I have there? That one had UCF. Okay, so yeah, so I'm looking at. I got Michigan not covering the 17.5 in that game. Illinois. I think that's one of those ones where I could see Illinois pulling it off because it's just the Big Ten's been weird. There are a lot of these conferences that you look at. The Pac-12 a little bit, but more so like the Big 12 and the Big 10 have had these weird situations where like a team goes from being, the team that makes the upsets and actually like steps into the limelight and becomes one of the favorites, like Illinois did, where Illinois was like the big kid on the block, and then Michigan State beats them.
Last week?
Say what?
Did you see what happened to Illinois last week?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So then you flip it around, and now they're the ones who could actually play the spoiler for Michigan, and I actually could see a path to that.
I had a bet on Illinois minus 6.5 last week, and I watched that game, and and they came out. They were playing really well. It was a weather game. There was tons of wind, but Purdue just kept on throwing the ball, and Illinois ended up getting flagged for pass interference. They took 12 penalties for 121 yards, which really affected the game. I mean, if they were just playing straight up, take away the penalties, Illinois played the better game. A lot of, I'm sure some of those penalties were warranted, but I don't think all 12 of them were. So the officials really affected the game. Illinois' defense looked a lot better than you'd think it would look in a game where they gave up 30-plus points. But everything I saw from Illinois last week leads me to believe that in a weather game in Ann Arbor, they can slow this game down, hang around, stay in it, give themselves an opportunity to steal one. Whether they do or not, I don't know. But 17.5 looks like a pretty big number to cover against the number 3 ranked defense. It's the number 1 versus number 3 ranked defense, right? That's the matchup. So that 17.5 points, a big number for a matchup like that.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is that you're not even at that point. You're not even counting on Illinois being able to really do anything offensively. You're just counting on Illinois being able to slow down Blake Corum and
keep 26-10.
Yeah,
28-14. That's
right.
That's what you're looking at, right? That's what the and the total being
17-0 still wins. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
you're at 17.5, 17-0 still wins. So yeah.
Well, and you look at the total, and it sort of suggests that that's the kind of game script we're looking at, right? We're not looking at a 42-10 game. That's not what the script is written for this game. So
right. Let me see what my so let's see. So I'll tell you exactly what this over-under suggests what the implied score is based on my model for this one.
I'm going to guess 27-14.
27-15, yeah.
I'm good. I am
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yep. It's right at
I don't even have,
right
I
at
don't even
12.
have
Right at 12 points. Yeah, right at 12 points is the total is the spread on that one in favor of Michigan. Yeah, I mean, I think so. Illinois, obviously, they're not as good as everybody thought they was. I thought they were, 3 weeks ago, but I don't think they're as bad as they looked, especially against Michigan State, where they just got rolled in that one. But against what I think I don't want to say it's a bad Michigan State team, but they're below mediocre, that's for sure. And so, but yeah, I can see that one. Now, Alex asks about Vandy, Florida. I do not see. I do not like Vandy against Florida. Florida's got a lot of talent, just the way that the quarterback position is excuse me, is explosive enough. They've got enough athletes, and Vandy coming off of their first SEC win in I don't know how many years. It's been a while. I think they're riding high. They're probably feeling themselves, but I see that coming to a screeching, crashing halt. Yeah, they're playing in Nashville today, but I like Florida to actually win and maybe not cover, but I like Florida to win. When I see a spread like that, I'm staying away from the spread. I'm just looking at that one. I expect Florida to win that game, but I'm not going to try to take a stab.
It's a game I want to stay away from. To be honest with you, it's not a game. It's not a game I want to have any action on.
I haven't even looked at the weather out there, but it's it's an outdoor stadium. It's in Nashville. It's that time of year where I wouldn't be surprised if it's like some really cold rain or maybe even snow or you know what I mean. It's just I'm not on the spread. I don't.
I had my Mountain West total of the year last week, and it was a snow game in Nevada.
Oh man, that's
and no, you don't expect a snow game in Nevada, but yeah, it does snow in Reno, baby. And,
that's right. That's right. Yeah, I mean it happens. But yeah, so let's see. Florida's road favorites in conference 0-7 last 7 spots. Oh, okay. 0-7 against the spread. Okay. Huh. Well, yeah, I mean, so if you're feeling anyway, I would say if I'm leaning away, it's Vandy plus the points. But I do not like Vandy straight up. I'll tell you that much, obviously, for obvious reasons. But I don't know that Florida's capable of like hanging points on you, but they'll play down to their level of competition sometimes too. So I wouldn't put it past them to. I mean, this team, they hung 20 points on Georgia. They had us down early, LSU down early, and LSU had to come back and I think we scored 48 or 42 consecutive points before they scored again. So I don't know, but Anthony Richardson is a good quarterback. Like he's for a matchup like this, he's capable enough in the passing game, but he's a menace rushing. He has 588 yards thus far this season with 9 rushing touchdowns and a long of 81, which I think that 81-yarder might have been against us. I know it was really long. I know he broke off a really long touchdown run against LSU back a few weeks ago. But yeah, so I'm staying away from it. I get you. You want to go to the window with that, Alex? More power to you, but I'm staying away from it.
I got another game that I'm interested in, and it's Cincinnati and Temple.
All right. We go to the Book of Armaments here and see what we got.
Cincinnati's dropped off quite a bit. They started not bad, but it's become quite apparent that the 9 players they lost to the NFL draft, have hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
They've been playing down to opponents. They're a 17-point favorite on the road against Temple. And did you know how many times Temple's punted in their last 2 games?
No, I do not know.
You want to fashion an estimate, or?
I don't know, 3.
Well, we wouldn't be talking about it unless it was significant, right?
Right. It has to be really low or really high. So
I think they didn't punt for 2 games in a row.
Are you serious? Wow. All right, that's
And
impressive.
Temple, like
Yeah.
a pretty crappy team, but they've been on fire. Now I guess they played South Florida and just rolled them. So they've got a little bit of momentum. It's a home game for Temple. They're getting 17 points. It's a bad weather game. Supposed to be a ton of wind.
Right.
I think this game's got take the points written all over it, and another under.
So
Cincinnati's offense is bad too.
Yeah.
That their quarterback. I had Cincinnati in that game against, I think it was SMU, and they were winning by like 17 points late in the game, and they were going in for like a score that was just going to put it out of reach, and they kept on getting false start penalties, offensive line just screwing up. They ended up almost handing the game back to SMU. They ended up only winning by 2 as a 2.5 point favorite. Now I had them on the money line, but anybody who had the minus 2.5 just had like the worst bad beat of their lives.
Right.
And they have been sloppy like that. I mean, and poor offensive line play, just not a lot of the skill that they had last year. They just don't have it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so the dog catcher, my computer model identified Temple as what should have been the favorite in that South Florida game a couple of weeks ago, and obviously they won. They ran away with that one. They have not been identified in the last couple of weeks, and this week I have actually Cincinnati winning by more than what the spread suggests, favored by 23 instead of the 17 or so that it is. So I'm not on that bandwagon, but I can see the case that you're making, because one of the things when you're dealing with a computer model, that's why I always use this as it's part of a balanced breakfast. And generally speaking, what I try to do when the odds are good enough, I just bet them all, because unless there's something where like I have identified some where it's like, okay, well, this one's different because they just lost their starting quarterback, and so I'm not gonna take all this data with, whether it's Jalen Daniels at Kansas or whoever the case may be, Garrett Schrader at Syracuse. They're a completely different team with him in the lineup versus without him in the lineup. And they've had some other injuries as well, but he is a huge difference maker for them. So I'm not going to take, because then it's a double whammy, right? Like you're taking data, using him and what he brings to the team in your model, and then he's not part of the team. So the team's worse. And it's like, it's hitting you bad in both spots. So I will take some instances like that where I will hand select a matchup and say I'm not betting that one because there's a legitimate reason. But for the most part,
weather is another factor that the computer doesn't.
Yeah,
doesn't
right. And so I generally just try to trust that if I try to outsmart myself too much on this, and I try to find all the different ways that each time the model identifies an upset that it could be wrong. If I avoid getting too nitpicky and paralysis by analysis on it, I do pretty well just betting them all, except for, like I said, when there's an extreme example of there was one a couple weeks ago. Cameron Rising wasn't playing for Utah. Like, that's it. You got a Heisman Trophy candidate quarterback not in the lineup.
Wasn't announced until like
it wasn't announced until the game had already started or almost almost started. Yeah. And so it was like, okay, pull, can I cash this bet out? Damn. So something like that happens. It's a game changer, right? Everything else is I just kind of take it with a grain of salt, and I say, like, you know what? I'm going to bet it anyway, even though there may be an angle, because some of these things we're talking about, the weather. Okay. What's the weather going to do? For instance, in that, what was the game we were talking about? Baylor and TCU. If the wind's blowing harder, or if it's wet, or if it's cold, like, who does that favor, TCU or Baylor? I don't know. We're probably talking about, a 54-46% shift in
the game's close to a pick 'em, so in that case, right. That's not that. But when we're talking 17 points, though,
yeah.
all of a sudden it becomes harder to run up the score in a game where you're more inclined to run, and
And I will say, I stay away from these games where, like, when my model suggests that they should beat the spread, I look at it and I'm like, what's the point? Like, what am I'm one of those people who, when I look at a game like that, the only thing I see any value in is betting the underdog. So if my model doesn't say bet the underdog, I'm not betting it, because what do I gain from betting the 17.5, them covering the spread? Like first of all, I'm going to have to pay minus 110 probably at a minimum just to get that spread. And then I'm up against 17.5 points. No, thank you. I'd much rather go after that UConn bet where I'm getting 10.5 points and I'm getting a plus 300 or greater money line. And so if I just put my money there, if I win way bigger than if I'm betting the other side of it. So that's just kind of the way I look at it with this stuff. I'm looking for, again, if I think it's 50-50, but they're giving me 4-1 odds, I'll take that all day, every day. Because if I'm right and it is 50-50, even if I only win half of those bets, I'm still 2-1 odds on all of my plays.
Makes plenty of sense to me.
Yeah. So
certainly seems like it's been effective.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'd have to go back and look. I don't remember I think I have it in here. Let me see if I can pull up where it is in terms of like units won since I started it in week 7. No, I don't have the units won. Dang. I have it for NFL, but I don't have it for college. So I do have some NFL bets on that as well. But AG and I will be doing that show tomorrow morning where we go over all of our prop bets and picks for straight up games and spreads and everything tomorrow morning. So anyway, I don't have anything else. I don't know if you got anything else.
I think we pretty much, flogged it like a dead horse. We covered everything.
That's right. All right, so go UConn. Sorry, I know you're on Army, but go UConn anyway.
I didn't actually play Army.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
I mean, the line does stink. It just looks like Army shouldn't be favored by. It really looks like that's just a huge number. But I think that the situational, motivational aspect of it really looks like a flat spot for UConn to me. If I was going to play it, I'd probably rather have Army, but I didn't play it.
Yeah.
But I could certainly see why a guy would like UConn getting 10 points or getting big money. I mean, it's not going to shock me if they win the game.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And it's not, this isn't just like I looked at it and I'm like, ooh, 10 points. All right, sweet. Yeah, let me go for it. And also, ooh, big money line. Yeah, let me go for it. Like, no, like my model says it should be the other way around. They should be the 10-point favorite. And so when I see that, I'm like, okay, I can't pass this up, because that was the same thing. Liberty, my model favored Liberty over Arkansas. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, I was 0% surprised that Liberty beat Arkansas. There are a lot of people who are like, oh, upset of the year. Well, it's not an upset by my computer. Like, my computer says they should be the favorite. So that's when I see something like that, it's not a guarantee. Obviously, they're 31-28 so far in the last 4 or 5 weeks, straight up. But show me somebody else who's picked, over 50% underdogs with money lines averaging probably plus 200. That's, like I said, give me that all day.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, I'll let you sign us off, man.
All right. Well, if anybody's still out there listening, remember, bet with your head and not over it. And may all the wins be yours.
Peace, y'all. All right. Oh, I'm still here by myself. He just left, and I can't end it. All right, people. Love y'all. Happy betting. Have fun today. Peace.